So please try and think of what type of help you think you're going to need. And again, I will be asking for feedback at the end. So Dornan will drop into the chat, or I'll drop into the chat a link. If you could then click on that and give us some feedback. Again, if I'm being honest, I've probably spent the last 3 weeks, and I haven't spoke to my wife and kids trying to put this together. That's not a bad thing on some ways, but obviously I put quite a lot of time in. So the least I'd ask is if you could just give me some feedback. That would be much appreciated at the end. So let's get started. So you can see here, this is the base outline of the mind map. Now there's a little tiny guide or a legend that I've thrown into the middle. So what this basically says is, if it's got a red flag next to it, this is must do. So this is part of the guidance. Now the guidance is basically the least you need to do to be able to open. So obviously this presentation is not just going to tell you the least, it's going to tell you the best business decisions to make, or hopefully the best decisions that you need to make in order to try and maximize the opportunity that we've got ahead of us. So you've got must do, should do, and could do, which are the sort of red, amber, green flags. If it has a little blue dot on with an I, that means that there's definitely going to be training needed. And if there's a little green pen, that is a decision to be made. And then if it has a grey star, this means that it's a good business decision. So I'll give you an example. In the guidance, there's nothing about how you should market this to people, but so therefore you don't have to market it. But if you were opening a new site, which is exactly what we're doing, all the fact that it's not new, marketing needs to be one of the most important things that you do. It's about how do we get that message across. So you'll see there I put certain stars on things because although it's not part of the guidance, it makes extremely good business sense to do. So as you'll see, you're going to get a copy of this as I start to go through it. And then what you've got is this other document, which is going to have a whole, it's basically got the whole of every single thing that you're going to see but built in. And you can see here, I've tried to add at the end what flag it's got, whether it's an orange flag, whether it's a red flag, etc. And then you can use this to start your own plan, so you can allocate things out to people, etc., etc. So let's get back to the map. PPE and protecting staff. So me personally, I think it's about putting staff first, no matter what. Now, you can see here for staff, there's a decision to be made on what PPE is going to be needed. Now, on the UK guidance, it basically says that there's no PPE needed apart from for cleaning. But I know, and I'm so made up with this, that Nicola Sturgeon has said that you're going to need to use masks. So again, obviously visors, aprons, gloves, screens, etc. These are all things that are going to give the public a hell of a lot more confidence. Now, I love the fact that Nicola Sturgeon said that you're going to get masks, because in Alaska, where they didn't have masks, they've had major issues and the public confidence is really, really low. And it's not just about public confidence, it's about the people, it's about the staff and trying to protect them. Now, it's very, very it's very, very hard to understand. Do you need one or do you not need one? Because you go into a hospital and you need one, and then as soon as you come out, apparently they don't work. So I'm just so happy that they basically said that you're going to use them, which is brilliant. So again, here's what you could be offering, and obviously the reds for you are sort of non-negotiable. Now, in terms of departments, there's been some information in the guidelines saying that things like creches should not open in soft play. Now, in terms of them, obviously they're not to open. Children will struggle with the social distancing, and things like ball pools and all the touching and all the different things that go on. The cleaning of it is just not going to happen to be able to fight the risk of COVID. So obviously when we get the staff to use PPE, so they need to know where to get it from, how often it needs changing. So what that means is that does a mask last for a week? Does it last for 4 hours? Does it last for a day? Obviously that will depend on the types of masks that you buy. And how do we reorder these? If you're going to order them in, we know getting hold of them doesn't seem to be the problem, but keeping hold of them and restocking is the thing that seems to be causing issues. I've already presented this presentation to about 25 different organisations, and I would say about 15 of those have already ordered their PPE and sanitisation stations. So it's definitely something that you need to move on quick. In terms of advice, now obviously we've got advice for staff. This is basically making sure, again, all these type of posters are going to be included in the pack. These are from the World Health Organization. But if people feel sick, to stay at home. Don't go to the health centre or the gym if you're feeling ill in any way, shape or form. So there's a little guide here for you to put up. And also, we can't assume that staff know how to wash their hands. So what we can basically do is there's a few posters and a few bits and pieces there. In terms of customers, again, there's a World Health Organization poster. It's been designed with the 7 basic steps to make sure that people can prevent COVID within your particular site. So these are all available. The idea again is that I don't want 7,000 different marketers in all different gyms all over the country trying to make something if it's already readily available to us. Obviously no handshakes and all that type of thing. So again, this is the advice we need to train people. Now, again, there's a decision to be made. So this decision is staff rooms. Should they be open or should they not? Now, again, through speaking to different organisations, some are just saying it's closed, simple as, you can't go in there. And some of them are basically saying that they've got like a timetable. So they've got half an hour slots where you can have one receptionist, one fitness and one leisure assistant or whatever it may be in your particular site. So you've got to monitor that. We know that it's a breeding or it's a hanging ground. So if you are going to close it, the only thing I'd say is that you've got to give them advice of where they can go from lunch. Lunch or dinner break shouldn't be in the place that they're working, so it shouldn't be at the desk. So are you going to tell them to go to the car, or is there a space outside if it's a nice day, etc.? What is it you're going to do? Any meetings? I'm sure you've done this already, and I'm sure some of you are already Zoomed out or Zoho'd out or whatever it may be, whatever software you're using. But in terms of meetings, how many of these can we get onto a virtual platform so we can prevent the face-to-face side of things? When you first come back, if you have furloughed staff, obviously they probably won't all come back straight away, but you just need to consider that when I walk into some sites and they have one receptionist, maybe 2, well, going forward, depending on how you do this, there's a likelihood that you're going to need people to manage the door and manage the queues, etc. So just bear in mind that it's not just all the old positions that we're going to try and fill. In terms of customers, so again, what is it we're going to supply them? Now, what the actual guidance says is that you need to provide the ability to make them, to keep the hands clean. Now, whether that is soap and water or whether that is hand gel is yet to be decided. So I've put hand gel down at the moment. The only thing I'd say is everywhere that's provided hand gel, it gets stolen. So please bear that in mind. Again, I spoke to an organisation the other day, and what they're going to do is they're going to create a basic COVID pack, which has it has a towel in to wipe stuff down. It's going to have some hand gels in, and they're going to use this as a little tiny bit of an opportunity to maybe have an additional sell there. So they're basically going to say, look, these are all the things we're going to do for you, but do you want to keep your own personal hygiene? If you do, we can help you. The customers need to know what's expected of them, and again, I see this as probably a YouTube video that they have to watch, which talks about if they feel ill, what would they do? If they cough, where are they going to cough? If they're going to use kit, how would they clean kit and what would be expected? There's also another thing that I put here, which is dealing with staffing conflict. So in the process of doing this, especially with all the social distancing stuff, etc., I've tried to look on a lot of forums to do with retail and supermarkets. And there's a lot of people crying on them. There's a lot of people upset. So there is going to be conflict. There are going to be people who are angrier than normal, whether it's because they've been cooped up in a house for 7 to 8 months and now they've just been let out or not. We're not sure, but it's really something that we need to come up with, is helping them be able to deal with conflict and having a way of dealing with it. Again, what are we going to do for them? Blue roll, hand wipes, barriers. If you have car park machines, so if they're contactless, that's probably not an issue. If you have to touch them, how do people wipe the pins, etc.? Some people have said they're going to close the car park machines, but again, these are the decisions that have to be made, which is why there's a little pen up here saying you just need to decide what it is you're going to do for them. One-way routes. So what it says with the one-way routes is it advises you to have them in the guidance, but it doesn't advise how you should do it. So again, are you going to have a map to explain? Are you going to have arrows on the floor? Are you going to have stuff hanging from the ceiling? And how are you going to prevent people from sort of grouping? So we know that preventing people from grouping is one of the things that we have to do via guidance. So in my eyes, it's about making sure these one-way routes go through the middle of where people would group, which would then give them less chance to group because it'll turn into a thoroughfare. Lifeguarding. So you will have had lifeguards who have been furloughed maybe, and might not have been kept up with their training. So before they can go back in, we need to get their training back up to scratch. So we need to take that into account. Now, this next one hasn't come out in guidance, but I think it's extremely valid, which is if one of your staff or a member comes up and they have COVID after you've opened, what's your plan? So how are you going to contact staff? How are you going to send people home? How are you going to close down? So if you lose one member of the staff, does that mean that you have to close a certain part? So is the first thing we close, no matter which member of staff is the small pool. Then we go on to the next thing, etc., etc. But it's making sure that you have that plan A and plan B sorted. In terms of deep cleaning things, again, I'm trying to get some. There's a gentleman from Safety Slips Limited who's going to put something together which we'll add to the pack later, which is guidance on what a deep clean is. Now, I've been to some of your organisations and I've worked with some of them, and the idea of deep cleans is something that it's got to be different than the norm. I'll go on to that in a bit more detail when we go into the cleaning section in a minute. In terms of official, obviously, if anyone's ill, then we have to report this. So again, that is an official thing in terms of the guidance that we have to make sure that it gets recorded properly. With first aiders, so the RLSS has come back and given us the information that there's no mouth to mouth, it's just compressions. So there's a few tweaks in terms of training, in terms of what we need to tell the staff in terms of first aid. Now, this hasn't happened yet, but I know some of you are hospitals and help centres and various different things in the community. So there's a high likelihood that some of you may become NHS testing centres. As soon as that happens, we'll try and help you put a plan together for it. So it's just a consideration at the moment. So that is PPE and PPE alone. So I'm just very quietly going to go and see if there's any questions from Dawn, and then we'll open them out if there is. Won't be a second. Okay, so we have a question from Pat McCann. Pat, I think you should be able to speak now. Maybe not. Maybe it's still spinning. Dawn, just let me know what the question was again, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So Pat's question was, if we're wearing too much, our staff wearing too much PPE, would it not scare customers and undermine public confidence?
So a really good question. What we found in China and the places in America where they've done this well, it actually massively improves customer confidence. Now, if we're being honest, what you're looking at is a mask. It's literally, so we're not going down the visor route and stuff. You may go for screens. I think screens aren't advised in the retail guides, but they've got them there to look after the staff. So in terms of worrying about the fear, I think the fear is that you're not going to have PPE. And again, the sites which have opened and closed in Beijing, that was something that happened. So, Dawn, any other questions?
Yep, absolutely. We've got Stuart Burnside. He is asking, is there any advice on changing rooms in regards to avoiding grouping and implementing social distancing?
Yeah, this is one of the things which of course is going to happen, is that there's the whole map to go through, and obviously in the phasing part, we're going to talk about what happens in changing rooms. So if you can just hold back on that one for now, that would be lovely. So I'm now going to enter into the next one, which is cleaning standards, and I'm going to start to go through that for you. So cleaning standards. So we know that what we need to, now one of the things that slightly frustrates me in terms of cleaning standards is theoretically nothing should change, because we should have been doing all this beforehand. Because before COVID, there was other bacteria and other viruses that we wanted to clean and kill off. So theoretically, nothing will change in your business if you were doing everything right. Now, let's be realistic. We know that's not the case. So what they're saying now is we need to break down what gets cleaned and how often. So I put two little lists together. This isn't definitive, it's just two little bits I put together. So for staff, it'll be things like desks, surfaces, chairs, phones, screens, tills, card machines, doors. So we'll be looking at those types of things. For customers, you're looking at doors, hair dryers, shampoo dispensers, toilet rolls, lockers, lifts. Lifts in general, obviously staff need to go in them, customers need to go in them. So depending on how big your lift is, it might be one at a time. So we need to look at regularity, that's key. There has to be cleaner training. Now, I think cleaner training is something that really bodes well for e-learning. Now again, you could all go and create your own separate e-learning, or is this something that you might want to do as a group? Because it'll be a hell of a lot cheaper, and it'll be, we can probably get it a lot more professional. So the idea behind it is cleaner training, what cloths, what kit, so hoovers, sprayers, tiles, cleaners, what's the expectation? So again, are there any videos of showing people what to do? But we need to make sure that the staff have been trained on cleaning again before they come back in. Proposed deep cleans. So what this is fog cleaning is seen as a nicety. Now, I don't know whether you've noticed, but every time the government want to show you they're doing something in a care home or that they're doing something somewhere, they show you the picture of someone fogging. So I personally think that this would be a very good idea to, if you are going to fog, then make sure you get these types of things videoed so we can use it in social media to try and increase the public confidence. Now, the stuff that you're definitely going to have to do, now you can see here how my list quickly changed into, Jesus Christ, this is everything. So you've got kit for classes, dumbbells, bands, all that type of stuff. You've got leaflet holders, notice boards, lockers. And at this stage, it's when I realized it's basically everything. So I didn't go through and make the list for everything, but we need to deep clean absolutely everything. Sanitisation station. So now what dictates it's a sanitisation station? Is the fact that it's a spray with some blue roll there, is that a sanitisation station? Or are you going to do what some other organisations and order a professional looking one with proper stuff there so they can do it properly? Again, you know, from what these are going to have to be increased. When you go into the gym and there was maybe one or two by the gym desk, again, this is definitely something that we're going to need to increase around the building. Again, these things are probably going to get robbed. So you've got to bear in mind how you're going to make it safer to try and make it stay. Again, with these, where will they be? How often will they get cleaned? I get so fed up going to organisations and telling them the bins are dirty. So this is going to be the same type of thing. Because this is somewhere to clean up, then people don't always clean it itself. And when do these things get rechecked? In terms of checked, anyone that's ever worked with me before in the past, so I've starred this one. This is not about saying when does stuff get signed off so we're covered so we can't get sued. To me, this is about making sure that managers check the checks. If they can't check, if they're not checking the checks, that's going to cause major issues. I was in an organisation not that long ago, and they were that good. They managed at 8 o'clock in the morning, they'd already done their 10 a.m. check, which I thought was brilliant of them. Then later in the day, I walked around the building, it was 3:30, and the 3 o'clock check hadn't been done. But at 4:30, it had. They were amazing. Okay, so it's not about things getting signed off and getting our bums covered. This is about making sure the job has been done and having proper checks in place. So, wait there 1 second, I need to turn on mute a little bit. So, again, we need to make sure there's proof and various different things there. Now, the time it takes for things to get cleaned. So let's just say, for instance, I've got an aerobic studio and it's 1,500 meters squared. Well, how long does it take to get that cleaned properly and effectively? Okay, so 10 minutes is not enough. It's not good enough. So we not only do we need to know the regularity of all the individual things, we need to try and find out exactly how much each zone or each room takes in order to get cleaned properly. Now, what I've done, so this, I've been doing some work with a lot of organisations. So these next two pieces is best practice that I've worked on with Dumfries and Galloway. So if Big Stewie's around or he's on, can you give him a little pat on the back next time you see him? So what this is, if I quickly go into here, so let me just move this. So this is an example of a cleaning rota or a cleaning document. So it's got cleaning definitions. equipment expectations and storage, outcomes and measures, colour coding for what cloths and buckets, etc. How do you monitor service? Designing and monitoring, leisure positions, where they would stand around the building, what they're allowed to do in those positions. Now, I know you can't read this, but I'm just trying to let you know what's coming. And then there's like guides of different types of checks and when they would get done and how often they would get done and etc. etc. So you're going to get one of those. Then what you're also going to get is a breakdown of the standards that you need. Now, I would suggest that you do this next thing and video it at the same time so that you've got video backup. So let's say, for instance, I've got to go and clean a toilet. Then what I would do is I would find urinals on here. I'm sure it's here somewhere. So I'd find urinals. Let's not do urinals. Let's just do, we're doing flooring with a mop and bucket. So I'd video myself doing it. So I go to this zone, I get this bit of kit out. Then I go to the place I'm going to do. I make sure I put this sign up. Then I use this mop with this. I make sure to wring the mop out so many times, etc., etc. Now, the time it takes to video you doing the task is only a little tiny bit longer than it takes to do the task. The time it takes you to build one of these, like, don't get me wrong, I'm going to give you this free of charge to get you up and running. But the videos are so much quicker and it gets into so much more detail. So, again, I just think it's a key thing that you need to look at. And we need to do stuff with. So I'm going to open up for questions again, just to see if there's any questions or anything that you can add into the cleaning standard side of things. So let's see if there's any questions that have come out. Donna?
Just a couple of things. Sarah Robertson had asked, is there any knowledge around the expected of fog cleaning?
Yes, there is. Fog cleaning is not expected at all. It's a nicety. If you want to do it, you can. Now, again, the public would probably think that everyone's doing it, because every single time I turn on the news, that's all I see. You know, we're cleaning things, and they've got these fog things going around, and people in Back to the Future suits. So, in my eyes, yes, sir. Personally, if it was in mine, would I get it done? Probably, but in terms of guidance, do you have to get this done? Now, we also know that the guidance is trying to save us a load of money, so that's a brilliant thing. Like the fact that you've got to get masks, you know, is that cost of buying the mask going to outweigh the cost of, you know, you're probably going to get more people back than people who don't wear masks, etc. So we know there's a cost on both occasions to this. But in terms of the fogging, it's not a guarantee. You don't need to do it, but I think the customers would like it. Okay,
quick one. We've got a raised hand from Alan Ray. Just ask him to put his question into the Q&A. I don't know. He's got his hand raised at the moment. And we've got just two other questions, okay?
Okay. So do you want to give me one of the other questions, mate? And then we'll...
Yep. We've got one that just goes back to it was talking about Mark Lloyd. How do lifeguards train but still keep 2 meters apart? Any guidance on that?
Okay, again, when we start doing the phasing part for swimming pools, I'll try and explain some things that you might be able to do. So, yeah, obviously it's hard because I'm unlocking a few different things and we're trying to jump ahead. I totally get that. So what I'll do is I'll jump on. It's probably going to be better for us or easier if I go around the rest of these and then we open out the questions. Because then we won't be asking questions for things that have already been answered, which saves me trying to do that twice, if that's okay. So let's have a look at COVID checks. In terms of COVID checks, so sickness reporting is non-negotiable. You have to report sickness and it has to be done properly. In terms of risk assessment, so I'm not sure if any of you lot have done risk assessments yet, but again, what I've tried to do is I've tried to build a risk assessment in for you. What I've also got, so this goes through sort of hand washing, it goes through cleaning, it goes through social distancing, all this links into the PHE. Now, I know this is for England. I'm hoping that Dornan or someone from SimSpa Scotland can try and pull into all the Scottish stuff to make sure it's matching. It's going to be pretty similar though. Wearing of gloves, RPE, etc. So again, in terms of risk assessments, I've just tried to put one together for you so you've got something to start. Now, this sign that you see in here is being used in Sweden. Obviously, in Sweden, they never closed their gyms, or well, a few did, but in general, they never closed. Now, in order, before you can return, you have to agree with this welcome if sign. So at the minute, we've got UK Active and SimSpa working in the background to try and get us the UK version of this. So it's not going to be that dissimilar to this, apart from the fact that the social distancing will be 2 meters, not 1.5. So again, you'll have copies of these types of things. Now, other things we need to check. So staff checks before they return. So have your staff been in isolation if they did have any illnesses at all? Has that been recorded? And are they aware of what to look out for in people? And so you're probably looking to have 10 questions that you'd want to go through with them when they first come back. Are your staff, again, have they been tested for it? And are you going to test them for their understanding? So we need to make sure they understand what's going on and they know what to do. And then we need to test them on it, because then we've got the proof that they understood it. Thermometry checks. Now, these have worked okay in places like China, but there's now guidance to prove that maybe this isn't going to give us the information that we need. So thermometry checks you don't have to do these. And my suggestion is with this, as soon as you give your staff a thermometer and ask them to start doing checks, you're asking them to become clinicians, which they're not. Imagine I've just ran from the car and I'm not very fit. I could possibly be hot on that. So thermometry checks that you'll see them using in China and stuff. You'll also see them in China using things like thermal imaging. Well, again, there's studies to prove that it's not as accurate as you'd like it to be for obviously people having a virus. And in the UK, we struggle to take photographs of people. So how we're going to do thermal imaging is beyond me. But hey, that's just my cynical, you know me being nice and cynical all the way through it. When people come in and test results start to happen a lot more, are you going to ask them for proof of test results before they come in? Like I've said, I'm assuming that a lot of you mystery shop yourselves. It makes sense that you do, because that's how you know whether you're doing well or not. Or you might want to do internal audits. If that's the case, what I've built in here is, where can I find it? Let me just find it along the bottom. No, it's the other way. Excuse me. There's that many forms we're giving you. It's amazing. So this one was for the auditor mystery shops. Yeah, so that is at the end. Sorry, but I do apologise for giving you so much information. So golf garden, studio setup, social distance, audit points. So these are the types of things that you'd want to audit yourself on. If you had a mystery shop, you'd probably want to add these to it to make sure that you're also taking into account COVID along the process. So again, it's all built into the pack. It's all free. You're going to get it all, not a problem. So COVID checks, they're fine. In terms of reception or staff measures, so of course we've got to try and prevent groups. Again, if we can do that with one-way systems, that would be brilliant. Queuing is going to cause you one of your biggest problems. Now, for the last 3 weeks that we've been closed, the weather's been lovely. There's a high likelihood whenever we go back, it's probably going to rain. So you've got to decide, where are people going to queue? How are you going to do the spacing? Are you going to have markers on the floor? Are they going to hang from the ceiling? What's it going to look like? Now, I envisage that when I walk into leisure centres, they're going to look like something from a scene from CSI, with like black and yellow tape and red and white tape here, and a body on a treadmill because you're not allowed to use it, etc. So we've got a bit more time than the supermarkets have had. So again, I think this type of thing is something that would really suit well to come in centrally. So instead of, the 32 authorities and we've got 51 organisations on this call. Instead of having 51 different types of spacing, it would make sense that you do one as a group, and we get it a hell of a lot cheaper. But obviously, I'm going to leave that to you. I can't get involved in that. But in terms of spacing and what it looks like, that's key. Again, when issues arise, this conflict management, most of the arguments are happening in and around the queue before they even get in. So again, be aware that that's what's causing the issues. Now, capacity levels. So China and America are pretty much open with 50% capacity. Now, this causes its own issues. If 50% of your business wants to walk in, what are you going to do? It's going to cause major problems. So you've got to decide how this works. Obviously, if they're booking a class, etc., then that's fine. That's easy because they booked the class, so it's limited numbers. Now, what some organisations are doing, and they see this as the only way of managing this in phase one, is that what they're doing is, sorry about that, I'm just getting another noise on this phone, so I just need to turn that off. 1 second, excuse me. So I totally lost myself then for 1 sec. Oh, yes. So what they're basically trying to do is they're going to sort of, in terms of managing flow counts and things like that, is they're going to have a booking system. So you can only book in to go for public swim. You can only book in if you want to go for the gym, etc. And you'd have probably hour slots. So again, within the leisure management stuff and the bits and pieces, I'm going to show there's guides of exactly what you're going to need to do in order to make sure you can make that happen in your business. Social distancing. Now, this is the key. This is the whole key to everything. So kindly, SimSpot have done some amazing work again in the background in terms of social distancing. And I can show you that here. So this is the guide from SimSpot in terms of social distancing. Let's be honest, it's keep 2 meters away. And if you can't, then you probably can't open or you can't do stuff. So I won't go through that whole thing because there's loads and loads of information in the backup, but this is just, again, this whole plan or this whole session that I'm trying to do is just to kickstart you, just to get all the information in one place and to get you ready to go. And so social distancing is what it is. Now, can we go cashless? Obviously, this would help reception, not only cashless, but can we go contactless? So contactless is now gone up to £45, which allows people to make, obviously, there's not a great deal of transactions that people would make that would be over £45, I would suggest, in your organisations, especially over the till. So it may give you a chance to do this. Now, if you have self-swipe or you have kiosks, then these now need to become self-wipe. So imagine I've got a kiosk and I use the pin buttons on it. Yeah, so if I've done that, then I need to be able to wipe it before the next person can come on. So it's great having these things, and it stops them from being able to have to deal with your staff, which is brilliant to keep the staff safe. But we need to be able to wipe it in between. Screens, if you're going to put them up, again, like we said before, the retail guidelines don't state that you have to put these up, but you probably noticed that a lot of places have, and it's a lot of this has been done on the forums due to public confidence. So there'll be no guideline that will tell you have to have a screen. But if you open up without a screen, will that make a difference compared to if you did wake up with a screen? Again, it goes back to that question that Pat had. Are they going to be scared of your screen, or are they going to be helpful that you're trying to save the life? I'm going for number 2 on this one. Delivery procedures. So as deliveries come in, they might need to ring up now and tell you that they're outside rather than walking in. And your drop off and where it comes into the building may now change. You might use a quieter door around the back somewhere. Yes, we might have to take it a little bit further, but if it makes it safer for people, that's what we're trying to do. And like we were saying before, there may need to be a booking only phase for when people first start coming in. And this is really to stop You're probably going to have 2 or 3 people on reception who need to manage the whole of the queue. Could you imagine if 100 people come in and it's raining? I don't think that's fair on reception. If we can try and control it, then it starts to make a bit more sense. So I'm just going to flick through these. We'll go through them. It starts to get a bit tasty now as well, so this is good. So the facility areas or the phasing, as we're calling it. So you can see here there's decisions to be made left, right, and centre. So let's go. Classes. So there's a likelihood that you're going to have to limit the number of classes you had. So if you had 100 classes before, it's very doubtful that you're going to have 100 classes afterwards. There's certain classes like circuits and things like that where you share kit. Anywhere where you share kit in a class, it's probably not, it probably can't go ahead. In terms of spacing classes, so obviously we need to make sure there's space. So what I've done, there's an example studio setup built into the pack. So this gives you an overview of exactly how. Now, do you need to go to 50%, which is what China have done and Sweden have done and America have done? Or do you need to find out what space you've got available, and that's the numbers that you're going to dictate? Again, I'd probably go for, one of them's easier as a blank statement to tell everyone what's happening, and one of them might get you a few more numbers or less, depending on what spaces you're using and how you use that. Now, one of the biggest issues is going to come in terms of space in the class. So you can see now you don't have to put markers on the floor. So what the guidelines basically say, you need to make sure there's social distancing, but you don't need to put any marks down. Now, again, how do they know where to stand? So to me, some studios, Pavigym, have put some really good examples up, but you're not going to go and buy a new gym floor, so that's not the case. But the reality is that there's got to be some sort of marking so they know the zones they're allowed into. The biggest problem is going to come is waiting for classes. So it's the waiting before and after. So there's a high likelihood that if you had an hour class beforehand, it now needs to go to 50 minutes. That will give people 5 minutes to get in, 5 minutes to wipe up and go. The key is that there's not people hanging around or crossing each other from different classes. We know it happens now, but we know we need to make sure that's not a problem when we go forward. So cleaning sort of after classes again, if members have to help, we haven't got enough staff to do this properly. Exactly like with wiping down the kit in the gyms, etc., which I'll come on to in a minute. The members have to help. They have to get involved. It's their kit for them in their gym. So they need to get involved in making sure it's safe for the next people to touch. So this sort of close down procedure after the class needs to get nailed. Again, different classes have different things, so we need to take it into account. Classes where kit gets shared. So let's say, for instance, you've got a boxer size class and you've got gloves. Well, this is a classic opportunity, I think, to say, look, if you want to buy some gloves off us and just use your own, then that's perfect. But in terms of using our kits, personally, I'd be stripping it back. But that's a choice you've got to make. Are you going to wipe and clean it after every single use? Or are you going to make the customer do it? If you make the customer do it, is it going to happen? Etc., etc. So me personally, I'd be taking it away, but that's a decision for you to make. Again, you're looking at yoga blocks, mats, foam rollers, Swiss balls, all those types of things. And again, can we use any outdoor space? So if we're only going to have 50% of capacity in the gym, can we use some of the car park? Because we obviously wouldn't need 100% capacity for the car park. You probably would, because I know you haven't got enough car parking spaces in most places. But in general, what I'm trying to say, is there any green space or any space outside that we could possibly start using so we could still keep to the spacing rules and make sure that we've got slightly higher numbers? That's classes. Gym. So I'd be having a COVID induction. So I'd have a little video that people have to watch and they have to sign to say they've seen. This can easily be done through your leisure management system. So when they come in, the screen flashes up, just watch this for me. Can you tick this to say that you've read it and you understand it? Excellent, you're allowed in. So the idea behind it, it's that this is where you say to customers, look, if you're not feeling well, please go home. And it's making sure that those posters you're going to put up that they're probably not going to read, that you've done something to make sure that they're aware of them and you know what's going on. In terms of reinductions, so imagine I joined in the beginning of March. I joined on the 10th and you threw me out on the 23rd and I haven't been allowed to use the kit for 4 months since. So you may want to have a phase where you're going to reinduct people. Again, in terms of communication, later on I'm going to talk about how I would phase people back in. But reinductions are key. Whatever induction you have will probably need to now include some COVID stuff, which makes sense. And again, making sure there's videos on in the gym around so they know exactly what's expected of them. Now, in terms of spacing of kit, imagine you've got 12 treadmills. I've got one treadmill here and this one's going to be out. Do I put a sign on it to say you can't use it, or do I move that to another space like a squash court or something? You know, a squash court, can squash be played? Well, we haven't had the guidance through yet. I'd suggest things like badminton are okay, where there's a net dividing us, but with squash, I'm not very good. I normally run into people. So would I get better use of a squash court if I put 5 treadmills in there because there's enough space? Maybe so. Wet areas. So again, I'm waiting for information back from Swim England and Swim Scotland. Please, if you're on the call or if you're involved, again, I'm happy to work with anyone whoever's guidance we need to make sure this happens properly. In terms of social distancing, so what's being talked about at the minute from the organisations I've started planning with is that either going to do circular, where people start to go round the outer pool, or what they're going to do is where you've got 2 lanes now, that would now become capable for 1. So I would swim up 1, I'd get under the rope. So I'd get under the rope and then I'd come down the other. So 2 lanes would now become 1 with COVID spacing where people could go round. Now, the biggest problem that you're going to have is the queuing and dropping off again. So especially for classes and lessons. So I have seen some guidance by Sport England and it's pretty good. I'm just not allowed to give that out yet because they haven't signed it off. As soon as it gets signed off, that's when I'll go back to the Scottish Leisure Network and give them all the details. I'm assuming Sport Scotland are in the same boat as well, and Swim Scotland are in the same boat. So hopefully we can get that tied up as quick as we can. Now, from what I've seen, the difference between Scottish versions and English versions, there's not a great deal in it. We're all trying to do the same thing. So I would say don't not plan this due to the fact that maybe we don't have some of the guidelines yet. I'd get a plan and I'd change the plan rather than not doing the plan at all. So classes and lessons, it's about, are you going to put markers on the pool for the kids to stand on, etc., to make sure we get the spacing? But that's the bit that's gone. Normally what happens is all the parents come and drop them off in the showers, and then they go and sit together and have a chat or a coffee upstairs or whatever your viewing gallery is. So obviously that type of thing can't happen now. Sauna and steam. So at the minute, the guidance is that they're to be closed, not to be open. If you close the pool, then PewTag put a document together saying how to close it. And I'm just saying reverse that on how to open it. Now, if you did close your pool, it's going to cost you a hell of a lot more money. So hopefully you never. Most people I've spoke to haven't. I've only, out of the 25 organisations I presented this to, only one's actually emptied the pool. And so, yeah, good. Again, we have kit on the pool side, so pull buoys, floats, etc. So are you going to remove them? Again, is this an opportunity to say, look, if you want to buy your own, you can use them, but if not, you can't. Now, the studies from PewTag are basically saying that the chlorinated water will kill off the disease. Now, it will, apart from when it's in the air. So if I've got a float and it gets covered in water, that will kill off anything that was on it. And we've got to bear in mind that the people who are letting in theoretically don't have COVID anyway, right? So I think that's a key factor with all the floats and bits and pieces. So your pool stuff, you may, because of that, you may want to keep it in. But some people have come back to me saying that you can't, PewTag have said that you can't get it in the pool. If somebody breathes on you in the pool, you can get it. But if you swim underwater for half an hour without breathing, you probably won't get it, but you'll probably just die of not breathing. So the PewTag stuff is about the pool area and what happens underwater, and yes, it will then protect. Gym hall. So obviously, if you've got lessons and things like gymnastics on, so gymnastics are saying that they can sort of create the spacing, which is fine. Now imagine someone's about to go and run over the vault or the horse or whatever it's called, and they're going to fall, and I've now got to save them, which means I've got to touch them. Well, what that's basically saying, at that moment in time, they could have fell on their head. Saving them is more important than the fear of COVID at this time. So it would only happen in extreme occasions for things like gymnastics. Whereas if I was to look at other contact sports, which we're coming down to now with the group activities like maybe basketball or football or five-a-side, or those types of things won't be able to come back in phase one. Definitely not in phase one. So again, this is why some organisations are using the gym halls to bring the extra kit from the gym in to get it spread out, so they don't use the usage of that gym kit. Okay, virtual offering. Well, this has gone massive. We know this has gone really, really big. So, you know, is this now going to start forming part of your timetable? If people can't make the class, are you going to start putting it on, you know, are you going to put phones there and have it on Facebook Live or whatever mechanism you've been using to do these? Are you going to create a group? So these are all for legs, bums and tums. These are for abs. These are for cardio. These are for strength. Are you going to sort of design something in the background which forms part of a new membership that will come? And we know how well Joe Wicks and stuff's gone down, so it really makes sense that we start to build this into it now. Changing rooms, which someone was asking before. So, right, it's a bit of a weird one, but some organisations are not opening up the pool when they first open, because if they do, they will have to open the changing rooms. So they're only opening up the gym to come and go. As soon as you allow swimming, you have to allow them to get changed. So that's the first decision I think that needs to be made. Now, if you are going to open the pool, is there a way that you could have pool only changing? Now, again, I know some organisations or places that could do that and some that can't. The ones that can, brilliant. The ones that can't, it becomes an issue. As soon as you do open up the changing room, now you've got to understand you're not going to man it. So this is where it comes down to the markings. So imagine I've got lockers on the top, lockers on the bottom. You'd have to take all the bottom out. And then you need to put something on to say it's only every third. So I spoke to an organisation last week and they're taking all the locks out so people can't use the ones in between. So again, in changing rooms, it's a really key thing because we don't man that area that can cause us problems. So if you opened up without the pool, people can just come and go, and all you need to do is make sure you've got toilets available for them. Now, shielded communities. So in Sweden, in America, they're just saying you can't come in. Now, in my eyes, these are the people in the most danger. Yes, the most danger of getting the disease, but also the people who would benefit most from exercise. So the over 70s, illness at risk, are you possibly going to consider giving them a time slot like the supermarkets have? So again, instead of saying, no, you can't come in, it's a blanket no, or are you going to say in phase 1, no, and then phase 2, we're going to give you time slots, phase 3, we're going to start opening up a little bit more. So again, this is what all these decision markers are basically telling us. We've got to make the decision here as to what's going to happen. Drop-off areas outside. So could 4 cars pull up, all the kids run out and pile in? If so, we probably want to stop that. So are you going to create, for certain sports, we're going to create different drop-off centres around the place? Or are you going to say that there's no drop-off? So you have to drop off outside of our property or our facilities. Now, again, it's up to, these are the decisions that have to be made, because these are the problems that have been biting people on the bum in supermarkets, etc. Work in the community for things like sports dev. So with the sports dev stuff, a lot of it is going out into groups. So every conversation I've had, they've said, not yet. It's not in phase 1. So again, these are decisions for you to make. Operationally, so what we're looking at here is heating systems. Did you turn them off if you closed? Make sure they're back on, they're back up and running, and we get them done properly. And what else did you turn off? So did you turn off, if you closed your pool, you've obviously got to get it back up and running. Things like, obviously, if there's been any water sitting, then obviously your Legionella tests and all that stuff is majorly important. I'm assuming that most of you, I'm wrong to make assumptions, and anyone who's done any of my training, I'll tell you, I always say don't make assumptions, but I'm assuming that you've used this time to touch up paint, unblock drains, clean things, make sure things don't smell, because you've always told me that you couldn't do it because you were never closed. So hopefully we've used this time wisely and it's going to be gleaming. But again, we've got to make sure those things are all corrected. Access control. If you're going to open up and you're going to say operationally that the pool's closed, how are you going to stop people from getting through to the pool, etc. So, and how do you know who's going where? So you've said to someone, they're not booked in to swim, they're only booked in to go to the gym. How are you going to stop them from then going to the gym, going for the swim? And there's some organisations that I've spoken to that they need to make sure that if you're to trust, you might need to speak to the councils to make sure that they sign off the building before you go back into it. So that may be a key factor. So that's happened with 3 of the organisations I've already spoken to. So climbing and soft play. So climbing, we're still waiting on information back from. Soft play, like I said before, creches and soft play at the minute, phase 1, they're just not going to be open. So obviously you've got a lot more unique little things within your businesses. So again, I didn't go into all the details. I quickly realised when I was putting this together that I couldn't make the plan too specific, because as soon as I did, it didn't become a template for everyone. So phasing is going to cause a load of headaches, and that's where the most decisions are to be made. Right. So data capture. So there's a load of small gyms which are going to close, right? We know this is going to happen. We don't want it to happen, but it's going to happen because this is going to cause quite a lot of pain to people. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that we've got our data capture procedure correct. Now, this should be every single phone call, every single walk-in should be on this sheet. Now, most of your organisations that I've worked with, I ask you how many people have walked in, and you tell me that you've closed nearly all of them. And when you say nearly all of them, that normally means to me that you don't know, because it just means that you think it's going to be that. So again, I know that I've worked with some organisations like Northland who are very, very good at this now at data capture. D&G, again, very, very good at this type of thing. So the idea behind it, we've got to be sharp at it. When you reopen, not all your customers are going to come back. They're not going to feel safe enough. So as soon as other members start coming to us, we've got to be in a position to be able to do something with them and make sure we treat them as good as we can. In terms of feedback, now the first bit of information you send to the customers, I'm assuming that you've sent something to them to say we froze your membership or whatever it may be. Now, of course, you're going to have to go back to them to say we're opening up and tell them what the phase is in. So I would suggest in that email that goes back, there's a link to a survey. And the survey is asking them what their fears are and how can we help them to overcome them. So could you imagine 400 of your members come back and say, I'm a little bit fearful of capturing this because I'm not sure what's going to happen and how clean the place is going to be. Now, you might then think, brilliant, we've got enough information. Let's do a little video for Facebook or for whatever, internet, so Instagram, etc., that shows us fog in the gym. It shows us staff with a mask on. It shows us us talking through the new cleaning schedules of how we're going to do it. There's a little video for them to click on that you can see now what's expected of them. So the whole idea, if we can glean as much information as we can then try and put fears at rest. And believe me, there are fears there. The study the other day was 48% of people are going to be fearful. 9% of people aren't even going to bother coming back at all. So the idea behind this is that would be the first part. You're going to have incoming feedback. Now, again, if I've worked with you, I always ask the question, how much feedback did you have last month? And I've never had an answer yet, no matter who I've worked with. I've never had an answer to that. And then I've said to them, how much of it was completed? Now, if you don't know the first bit, you definitely don't know the second. So incoming feedback, we have to log and we have to action it. So we need to deal with it and we need to manage it to completion. It's going to be more important now than ever. So we need to make sure that we do that. Again, I've designed a little data capture template. It's just, to be honest, it's a simple piece of paper. Anyone that's worked with me before will have already had it. But it's just a data capture form that just says what's your name, what are you interested in, what's your inquiry, and then whether we followed it up or not. So that's data capture. Now we go on to quite a big one. It's not a big one in terms of guidance, but I think it's massively big in terms of your business. So like we said, this new capture procedure is paramount. Oh, sorry, I've opened the same one again. Ignore that. I'm going to go into this. So in terms of communication, the only thing we have to do is we have to put signage up. Now, in terms of, and have procedures in place, but from a customer's perspective, is we need to make them aware that there's social distancing and these various different things. So yes, we need to have stuff on reception in the gyms, on the desks, on maybe some of them little wobblers on the treadmills, and within classes on the walls and in studio, all this type of stuff. We've got to give them the signage and changing rooms in one way. So we have to do that via the guidance, which is fine. Now we need to decide who we need to speak to. So customers, they need to understand what their expectations are. They need to know what our expectations are as a company and what we're willing to do for them. And they need to understand the phasing and how and when that's going to come in. In terms of staff, they need to know the phasing. They need to know any financial help, because some of them may be struggling if you furloughed them. Their health and well-being, so information on that and what training they're going to get before they go back in. Again, we also probably need to speak to our suppliers, our licensees, and any partners that we have. So it may be another part of the council. It may be, I might have a physio who comes in. I might have a beautician who rents a room or space off me. So we need to make sure that these are all made aware. And again, in terms of suppliers, we need to make sure they know the delivery procedures that we're now going to come up with. When are we going to communicate? So I'm assuming that when you're due to reopen, so again, the due to open communication might have something on phasing, what's expected of them, the financials and how you're going to unfreeze them and what that's going to look like, shielded individuals and what happens with those, and obviously a link to the survey. Now, I know that LeisureNet are doing an amazing survey. So if I can get any details on that and I can add it, I'll add that in at a later phase for you. So you've just got, I think they've got about 19 questions. I'm not saying you'd use them all, but instead of you creating one, it would be much quicker if you just use theirs as a bumper. So the when is key. If there's any changes to plan, then we probably need to make sure that that we inform them of those changes to plan. And also the phases, that as the phases come, then we'd want to let them know exactly what's happening and what happened with the last time, what worked, what didn't work, so what we're doing now. Now, I'm assuming that you haven't just communicated to them to say that you've stopped taking the money. I'm assuming that you've let them know that there's loads of work happening in the background in between these letters coming to them. Yeah, right. So I'm sure some of you have, but I'm sure some of you haven't got round to it yet. Now, in terms of, again, what I've done is I've put together as part of the template is a communication strategy. So what this is a quick guide that basically says, what's the project called? What's our mission? What's the executive summary? What are we trying to do? What analysis have we done? So competitor analysis, SWOT analysis, bits and pieces. Who are the stakeholders? What's the key messages we want to get across? What are we going to use? What channels? And how much is it going to cost us? And who's bloody doing it? And I think that's my first swear word, so I'm quite happy with myself because I'm doing all right on that. So there's a guide in there, there's a template. Now, again, when I was dealing with one of my customers, I'd seen some work that Alliance Leisure had done. So I rang them up and said, look, are you willing to help? And they said, of course we are. So brilliant. They've jumped on board and they've helped us. So TA6, basically what they're saying is testimonials are going to be key. Now, what this is when your customers first start coming in, they're going to be fearful. Maybe speak to some of our lovely customers and ask them to do a little video clip. So, yes, I was feeling awfully worried, but when I seen how much cleaning and they had these schedules in place, and so we can put this stuff on social media. So getting testimonials, real people, not us telling them, will drive this message as soon as we start to open. So that was an amazing thing they came up with. In terms of updating your social media and website, it's been the perfect time. Now, again, let's have a look at are you putting up all this new cleaning you're doing and how amazing it now looks? Are you putting anything on there about all the staff training that you're now able to do because you've been closed and, etc. And again, if there's anything for public confidence, like the fog cleaning or pictures of staff in PPE, is it scaring people off when you see someone in a hospital doing it? No. Would it scare you if you've seen someone in a hospital without it? Yes. So again, this is the idea of just have a look at the news every single night. There's pictures of people in PPE and there's pictures of fog cleaning. So if you want to incorporate that in, brilliant. If you're not going to do it, then obviously you can't. So that's fine. Now, you need to develop a campaign. So again, now this is what makes sense to me. Now, again, imagine the 51 organisations that have signed up for this seminar. So there's 51 organisations probably going to come up with 51 different plans. Why don't you work together as a Scottish Leisure Network and come up with one plan? We're all trying to do the same thing. So again, there's some examples here. TA6 have put some amazing work together already. It might make sense to try and do something a lot more central. Now, again, you've got to come up with the ideas of the campaign, and then you've got to develop what the campaign or what the plan looks like. So what channels are you going to use? What's the planner going to look like? When's the proofs come in? Now, I'm looking at this here. This is at least two to maybe 3 months worth of work in order to get this right. Again, they've already done a hell of a lot of work in the background. What I'm saying is imagine if you did this as Scottish Leisure Network and not the 51 individuals. I think it would be cheaper. And I think it would be probably more professional in the way you go about it. So again, all this stuff you can see here is built into the pack. So there's a marketing pack here, which has got these slides in that you can see and a bit more. But what I've also done is, you all know Woody anyway from the Scottish Leisure Network because they've been presenting up there, but Woody's details are all here. So you can get hold of them if you want any guidance or help with it. But so you've got to develop the campaign, which is brilliant. I'm assuming that you all have a digital strategy anyway, and you'd be putting bits and pieces on there. So tips to stay healthy, trying to diet while at home all the time, streaming memberships, which I'm sure will be blended memberships going forward, posting different workouts like you've been doing. And I've seen some organisations they've been selling home workout packs or home fitness packs. These can have rubber bands, kettlebells, dumbbells, mats, heart rate monitors, My Zone belts, whatever it is that you want to put within your pack. But again, we know that the opportunities for upselling and ad spend, to me, this is about making sure that you can use our service even though you're not in with us. It's not trying to get more money off them. It's trying to make sure they stay healthy while they're not coming in. In terms of targets, so again, they've done some amazing work at TA6. So you've got green, purple and blue, and all those little dots are telling you what you'd be able to do. I'm not going to go through them all because it's far too much. But the reality behind it, what we do have on there is the green. So imagine we opened in September. The green might start in July, and then the purple might start in August, and then the blue might start in. So these are like these are basically like months phase-ins. So this would be the green. What is for people who were live before COVID. So before we closed, all the members that were live, they're the one. That's going to be the first active campaign. They're the first people we want to speak to. Then the purple one is ex-members, because they're the quick win. And then you're going to open up for the decision to be made, by the way, and then you're opening up for new members after that. You know, would I open when I first opened? Would I be opening the door to new members? Unfortunately, not. The last thing I'd want to do is for new members to have poor confidence in us. So we need to get this right with our existing customers, and then we'd phase it in. So imagine you've been with an organisation for 20 years. There's only 50 slots in the gym, and a new person gets it. You've got to think about what the complaints are going to be, etc. So that's communication. Last but not least, oh no, not last but not least, there's two more, sorry. So the next one we're going to talk through is memberships. So are you going to phase certain memberships back at certain times? If you have an over 60s membership, is that going to be phased later due to the fact that they're sort of a special we need to look after those people? Are there going to be any new memberships? So are you going to create a virtual or a blended membership, or is it a virtual pay-as-you-go? Or so we've really got to start looking at all this amazing stuff we've been doing online. How does that become part of what we do? Ex-members, what's your plan? How are you going to use them? How are you going to do something with it? How are you going to get families involved? So they've all loved Joe Wicks. They've loved training with the little daughters and the sons and bits and pieces. So how are you going to bring that? Can you bring it virtually to them? And can you also bring it in the gym? So they're key things. Now, there's been some amazing work done by Gladstone. And when I asked Gladstone to do this, I asked them to make sure it was generic as possible so that anyone can take this to their provider. So if you're with Legends, or if you're with Scuba, if you're with XN, whoever it is that you're with, excuse me if it's not my keyboard, that you can take this sheet and say, look, can you help us to do this? So I'll talk you through the bits and pieces. In terms of classes, you will need to change the size of the classes on the system, and you're probably going to need to change the timings. So that's a given. We're definitely going to have to do that. Now, as people come in, and in some gyms, they hand you a card, you swipe it and hand it back. We're going to need to move scanners around. So if we move the scanners around so they can scan themselves, or you may need to buy the odd extra bit of kit or wiring or whatever it may be so we don't have to touch it. Or what you're going to have to do is they pass you the card, you wipe the card, you swipe the card, you wipe it back, you give it back. It's a hell of a lot. It's very messy when they could just swipe it themselves. Like we said before, cashless and ideally contactless. This next one is something that is really, really, really worrying people. And it's when you unfreeze, how much do you charge people? So I was speaking with two organisations that come up with this when I spoke to them, and what they both said is this: that I'm only going to be offering, limited space in my gym and limited classes. So how can I charge them full when they come back? Now, I think in an ethically perfect world, we might do something like this. In phase 1, you pay 50% of your membership. In phase 2, you pay 75%. In phase 3, you pay 90%. In phase 4, we're back to normal. I think that would be lovely. I don't know how much money you've lost already, but I'm assuming it's a lot. I'm assuming that this is costing you big style. So I don't know, business-wise, whether I would advise you to say to everyone, to give everyone half the money back just in case. So you'll see I've written down here the Sky approach. So what I mean by the Sky approach, which is this one here, is that if you ring up Sky and if you have a problem, they deal with you. So they have a plan of how to deal with issues. They don't give everyone it free of charge. They just give it to the people who've come and put their issue forward. That way is going to save you a hell of a lot more money. Again, you need to create a booking system if you're going to do this for public swims and the gym, etc. Now, this is a really key point. So let's say, for instance, I've sold 6,000 waters last month, and the water is 3 touches away on the screen. So I've got to touch drinks, then I touch something else, then I touch water. So my screen for 2,000 waters gets touched 6,000 times. Can we move the things we touch the most to the front screen? So again, Gladstone and XN, all these different, you'd run a transaction detail report, you'd sort it by units, and that way you would know what needs to be on your front screen. And what Gladstone have also said is, can we possibly use touch pens? So we know that it lives less time on a touch pen than it would on the human skin. You're going to need to create blended memberships or virtual memberships if you're doing it. You need to have a plan of action to deal with your pay-as-you-go members. Ideally, we probably don't want pay-as-you-go members to come in straight away. So again, that might be another consideration. And anything we can get online or mobile via an app is just a no-brainer. So while they're using an app, they're not touching people. And while they're using online, they're not touching people. So if you haven't got this up and running already, this is a necessity. So we can massively improve that side of things. Right. Last but not least, NHS. So what I'm saying here is, have you got a membership for your NHS? I know some of you are now screaming to the computer, although I can't hear you, to tell me, what about all the frontline key workers? Now, my suggestion to this is, if you can find a way of monitoring frontline key workers, do all of them. It could also harm your membership because it's probably a lot of your membership. Now, in terms of membership, you've even got to look at organisations like EE. They want the biggest capture market they can, but even they just went for the NHS. Yeah, so the idea behind it, if you want to open this out to key workers, knock yourselves out. All I'm saying is that the clap each week is for key workers, but the NHS are at the front of it and at the start of it. So if you started off with a membership of the NHS and developed it into key workers, I'm fine with that too. So hopefully that gets some of you to stop asking that question. Do you do any discounts? So when I say discounts, this is with your licensees. So if you've got a physio or you've got sort of like a hairdresser or a nail technician who's buying some space, can we get any discounts off the licensees for the NHS? Are you running a charity event across your estate? So again, imagine someone like Glasgow, Bob and his team pulling something together, and every single site does something. Now the funding will be a lot bigger. It's going to give you a lot more chance in getting in local papers and making awareness about just how much you're trying to do to make this better for people. And again, last but not least is open hours. Are you going to create some open hours, a bit like the supermarkets have done, just for these superheroes to come in when it's quiet, just for them, not with other people around them? They've had enough people around them all day who are ill, so let's give them a little chance of their own. Right, so before I finish, I'm just going to show you an example of exactly what you're going to get in the pack. So in this pack, every single thing that you've just seen, I've now brought in to an Excel document. So you can see here one-way routes, maps to explain, etc. And then up here, if you wanted to assign that to someone, you could and start adding bits and pieces to it. So every single thing that you've seen or I've talked about is in here. And it's on this. Again, I know you've probably already started this, so this will be to help you to add to your existing to your existing plan to give you a little bit of a boost. This must, should, could. So this is an amazing document put together by SimSpar, and this is to try and help you understand the guidelines. So guidelines in general are normally quite open and leave a lot of decisions to be made. So SimSpar, I've worked the trolley off in the background for this to try and make sure we can pull it together. Now, all the red flags and things that you've seen have been done based on this information. And so the flags at the end of here, so the flag, where it says flag, orange or red over here at the end, or on the actual map where it's got an orange flag, etc. That is taken into account all this information that's on here. In terms of PPE, so if you decide that you want to do it, how many masks per shift? Again, this depends on the quality. How many visors per month? How many gloves per shift? How many aprons? How many shifts will they do? Well, this is a little document that will work out exactly how much you need to order in. So that's a little tool to help. There's a risk assessment, the example cleaning document to show the exact cleaning standards, the amazing work by TA6 on the marketing. the data capture sheet, the social distancing by SimSpa, the leisure management guide, which is, honest to God, once you get into this, your membership admin teams need to look at this straight away. But that's their key. There's a couple of poster examples of things you might want to put up so you don't have to create your own. So I found these for you in different places. And the social distancing auditing points, the studio setup, and the communication strategy. Now, what we're also waiting for, there's also a golf guide if any of you have golf clubs, but we're waiting for the RLSS, any NGBs that can come back and give us information, a welcome if sign for our country, and Swim England or Swim Scotland sort of guidance going forward. Right, so I hope this has been beneficial. I'm thinking it has because we've still got 101 people on, which is ace. Now, I'm going to ask you one quick poll, and that is this. Would you please rate how useful this session was, please? It's all free. There's no pitch. I don't want anything. There doesn't have to be any follow-up whatsoever. So if anyone could vote for me, that would be absolutely much appreciated. What I'm going to do now is very, very quickly is I am going to get a guide. 1 second. So I'm just going to go in and get a link. I'm going to drop in so we can so you can give feedback on the session. So I'm going to send that via a link. I'm going to copy that link. Lovely jubbly. Okay, the link has gone. My handy sidekick Dawn Ann has smashed that out the park. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to have a look at any other questions. So we'll open it up and talk through the questions. So I'll get Dawn Ann to give us a little bit of info on here of any questions that have popped up that we might not have covered. And then if I can, I'll try and open the van out. So looking at this, you lovely people have given me a rating of 4.8. So I think that's quite good out of 5, isn't it? So thank you very much for those poll results. That's amazing. Now let's have a look at these questions. Dawn Ann, any that have stood out?
Yeah, okay. One going back to PPE from Colin Pratt in relation to any suggestions on approach to ensure they get the best quality and efficiency of product. Even around sustainability and make sure no materials are discarded unnecessarily. Yeah,
right. So this has caused a little bit of pain for me. I tried to get hold of about 10 different companies to have a look at PPE. Now, what I quickly found out is that 6 of those 10 that I thought were PPE companies were middlemen. So they were just jumping on the bandwagon. 3 of them had massively increased their prices from 2 months ago. So I also took them out of the equation. Now, what will be in the guide? Now, this isn't anything official, but in the section in the guide for PPE, what I've done is I've put a little bit of information of the one organisation that has given me some good information about PPE. Again, there's some details on the bottom. Now, I'm assuming you have your own providers, but there's a bit of information in here for you to try to answer that question for you. So hopefully that answers that one.
Okay, next one, Alan Ray, Sport Aberdeen. Any science behind the guidance on cleaning from Craig? So I think that's obviously going over to Christine Harris at Slip City.
Yeah, so basically Christian's putting something together for us as to what a deep clean stands for. Now, the problem with us trying to create videos or things like that for it is that you've probably got different kit, different chemicals and different surfaces. So we're trying to get a safety expert in safety slip systems to come up with the proper guidelines for this. As you can imagine, everyone is so scared on actually giving guidelines because if they tell you what to do and you do it and it's wrong. So this is where everyone is so fearful. So when you get to the governing bodies, that's why they don't want to say this is what you have to do. Imagine if I said you had to fog clean and that's now going to cost you so much more. So yeah, in general, I think it's just a matter of we're going to try and find out what guidance comes out. Have a look at what you've got in place at the minute because you must have done a deep clean in the past, hopefully. And between those 2 documents, hopefully we can come up with something. Again, one of my solutions for this whole thing is to speak to someone like Dawn Ann at the Scottish Leisure Network and to get her to become a best practice for the whole of Scotland for you. So if some good ideas like this keep coming in, she can amalgamate them and weekly strip them out. And weekly, we could maybe arrange meetings on, so there'd be a meeting on PPE and cleaning. There might be a meeting on marketing and data capture. So Dawn Ann could sort of hold webinars, or the Scottish Leisure Network could hold webinars to try and pull the whole thing together for you. So in the feedback, if anyone likes that type of thing, I think it would save you a shed load of money. But just let us know what your thoughts are when you do it. Any other questions, Damster?
Yeah, some more questions. Just a recent one just came in from Jennifer. Interested in Craig's views on percentage of customers that are expected to come back upon reopening. Okay,
so there's been some studies recently done by UK Active. I don't think these ones have been published yet, but it's as scary as about 30%. Now in China and Sweden, it's anywhere between probably anywhere up to 50% coming back straight away. So this phasing process is extremely key. Now, this is why this presentation is not about getting you open as quick as possible, right? Because we know that if we open now, financially, we're not going to win. Because could you imagine losing 80% of funding with 30% of your income? It's just not going to happen. It's not going to work. So you're dead right. That's why there's a lot of work going on in the background with UK Active and SimSpar trying to make sure there's a phase out plan so this can happen properly. But yet that number, unfortunately, Jennifer, is less than is around about 30% with the current polls that have been done.
Okay, so that's that one. Mark Harrison, in relation to the reception staff measures, should social distance be further than 2 metres for people when they're exercising or breathing heavily?
Well, there have been some study done on pathogens done when people are running. Now, I can imagine what the thought process here is. Imagine my fingers are 2 people and they're both meant to do a grapevine, which means they're both meant to do this. Now, am I running into someone else's breath? And what happens if they miss a step and then we do this? So these are the considerations that you have to take into account. Now, there's no governing body for an aerobics class. Now, there's a lot of institutions like Les Mills, which I'm sure will be able to help us and give us a lot more information as we get further down the line. But at this moment in time, the feedback that we have is that as long as you can stay 2 meters apart, it's fine. So social distancing, as long as you can do that, it's fine. If you don't think you can do it, then you don't think that class can go on. I hope that helps, Mark.
Okay, one here, Kev McIntosh. If pools are open and are able to keep social distancing in changing rooms, how do you do that in the shower areas?
These are the decisions that have to be made. And again, it depends on which, are you going to use some sort of old banding system so only 2 people come out at a time? Or the key is that these are all the considerations that we have to make. When I started working through this with the first couple of customers, I instantly realized that I couldn't start to answer those questions because those answers would only be correct for site specific. So without knowing what your showers look like, without knowing how many numbers are in the classes, that's what's going to dictate as and when we get that information.
Another one, Richie Gardner, to do with sort of junior swimming lessons where the teacher is required to go into the water, like preschool and beginners. Is that something that we can continue to teach?
Hopefully Swim Scotland will be able to give us more advice on this. They have said that lessons can go ahead, but again, it's a bit of a blanket statement. So, out of, say you've got 5 stages, maybe stage 1 can't because there's a lot more contact. So I'm really waiting for the lessons on the guidance of Swim Scotland to come out. I know Swim England is about to get passed, so I'm assuming that Swim Scotland are the same. They must have been working on this tirelessly. So hopefully we can, again, this would be great if we can have this central pool where all the information comes in and that's where we go for it.
Yep, likewise, Graham's seeking guidance on first aid. Anything out there that you're aware of?
The only guidance that I've heard about first aid is that mouth to mouth is gone and you only do compressions. The RLSS have confirmed this to us. We're waiting to get this confirmed by first aid companies. But a lot of first aid companies don't teach mouth to mouth anymore anyway.
Okay. And the one from Colin was, with potentially moving kit from gyms to activity areas, is there any suggestions on how best to protect the integrity of existing flooring?
I haven't even considered it.
Yeah.
But yeah, Of course, you're going to have to. Of course, you're going to have to protect the flooring. So, there'd be some sort of rubber feet or something along those lines. But I haven't even considered it. So yeah, that's brilliant. We'll add that to it.
Yep, and yeah, that's pretty much most of the questions. We've had some. David McLean came back saying a recent poll, Pure Gym said 67% of the UK customer base said they are keen to return, with only 14% saying they won't.
Okay, now what's key about this is that when I send a survey out to my existing members, there's a high likelihood that the members who like me will reply back. So they never said that 100% of their customers this is what the answer is. So I would suggest, out of the people that like you, that's the amount of people that would definitely want to come back. But the amount of people that like you and the amount of members you got are two totally different numbers, David. So the poll's great, and that's good for their individual use. But this is why we need to start doing polls to find out how our customers are feeling individually. But please take that into account, that not everyone will come back, and a huge chunk won't. So it's normally the people that love you that want to engage with you a lot. So I hope that helps, Dave.
Okay. One from Jennifer. Is the Sport England guidance you mentioned earlier in the conversation the same as the UK active operational guidance that's due soon? I think they're probably just to confirm that or not.
Okay, so obviously we've been working with UK Active on this. Now the guidance has gone off to get signed off. We've been waiting on virologists and various different people from Public Health England to Orthocare to say that it's okay. Can't even say that word. And obviously we also need to link in with Scotland, Wales and Ireland, so to make sure that it's right for everyone. So the guidance that we've seen, we've tried to match everything up to as we can. So this is a constantly moving, changing document. And you can imagine if the government come out next week and say, right, you've got to close again for another 7 weeks, then we've got to change again. So this plan is based on everything we know as of now. Now, as and when that guidance comes out, this is exactly why we probably need someone coordinating it up in Scotland to go, right. Now, again, I'd love to do this for you, but I've done everything. I've had 3 weeks in a bedroom and it's all been for free. So I can't keep doing stuff free of charge, which is why maybe we can look to do something with the Scottish Leisure Network or et cetera, et cetera.
Terry Parker's came in. Has anyone done any research into the impact of chloramines on COVID? Has been any information on that you're aware of?
Yes, Sport England said the chlorine does kill off COVID.
Okay.
Sorry, Swim England. And is it Pewter? I'm sorry about the PW tag. Is it them? They've also said it as well.
Okay. Just a couple of other kind of best advice shared. European Resuscitation Council has good guidelines. If anybody wants to be aware of that.
Whoever's got them, can they please send them to us and we'll add them to the pack?
Okay. And yep, another comment from Vicky saying, moving kit, just use the good old cardboard box under the kit.
Yeah, all right.
Right, hang on, one more question just coming in just now. There's Woody's just said from Aberdeen Sports Village, there's information coming from Italy regarding social distancing when exercising, which I thought was interesting. So yeah, we'll get that. We'll ask Woody to share that.
We'll have a look at it, but obviously we can't use another country's guide. So of course we can look at it and try and pull stuff out of it for you. But yeah, they're in a different situation to us, so it's slightly different. But yeah, thank you very much for that, Ludi, if you got it.
Okay, yeah, we've got a link there. Colin should have shared the link for that, the European Resuscitation Council. So yeah, that's all the questions that have came in just now. Okay,
well, thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed it. We've still got 94 on after the questions, so we've done something okay. Going forward, can you please, all I ask is that, can you please support some of the organisations that have helped with this, the likes of TA4, the likes of Gladstone, Safety Slips. I never added them in, but they are about to add some more stuff to this for us. SimSpar and UK Active are working tirelessly in the background to try and make sure we can have financial packages and all the guidance is correct. Obviously, I put a little bit of effort into this with the help, massive lots of help from Dawn Ann at Data Pepper. So again, just if we ever call you in the future, just think 5 minutes call, that'd be lovely. Just answer it for us, that'd be nice. But as I say, going forward, I hope you've enjoyed it. If anybody wants to, I'm still going to be working in the office. I've got one of these for universities next week. I've got one for the rest of the UK, hopefully the week after. But I'm at home. If anyone wants to ask me questions and ask me emails, then please feel free to do so. If you could all please give me feedback, that would be essential. It'd be absolutely essential for me. I'd be made up if you could do that. Because this is what helps me to get better as an organisation and hopefully helps us all pull together better. Thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed it. And this is also getting videoed, so we will be able to get this onto the Scottish Leisure Network site.
Yeah, so I think the thing just to confirm for everybody who maybe joined a bit later is just to confirm how the pack's going to be distributed, that we've got a list of everybody's email address, and I think what we'll be looking to do is put it up onto WeTransfer and send out to the email addresses we've got, just to confirm that to everyone. Yeah.
So yeah, we'll every single thing that you've seen, you'll get an email with the documents that we've discussed. You'll get a link, so you download them off WeTransfer, and then you've got them. But as I say, hopefully what we're going to try and do is try and create a central hub, a Scottish central hub via the Scottish Leisure Network, where we can keep, this is going to keep changing. It's going to keep changing and keep moving. And some of you organisations are doing what I call pockets of genius. When we get these pockets of genius and they've got a brilliant way of doing something, we need to share that across the rest of Scotland. So thank you for your time. I hope you've enjoyed it.
Huge thank yous came in from all the Scottish Leisure Network group and members. Everybody's been very grateful to your time today, and they found it really beneficial.
Lovely, jubbly. I've enjoyed it. Thank you very much, peeps. So that's us. Yeah. Thanks, peeps. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye now.